If you asked me 12, 18 months ago where I'd see the UK Green Building Council today, it's exactly where I'd expect it to be. In fact, to be clear, I think it's done more than I would have expected in its first 18 months.
I think the amount of ground that's been covered, the speed it's gone at, it's been quite extraordinary, and we now appear to have influence in all kinds of places which I thought would take a lot longer to achieve. So it's been a tremendously good start.
The thing that really counts is getting buildings right. And the Green Building Council has grasped that nettle and has got the industry out in front of everybody else. And that's an extraordinary achievement.
It's always difficult getting these organisations off the ground. It's much more difficult bringing together very diverse stakeholders, persuading them that it's better to work together towards a shared set of outcomes than work separately, often at each other's expense. And I think the Council's made some really important breakthroughs in the first year.
One of the big challenges of climate change is around sort of what you might call collaborative leadership and bringing together people and organisations and industries in ways that they haven't worked together previously. And the building and energy industry is a classic example of that.
In order to make this agenda work and to move forward effectively, we need to transcend competitive lines and actually, work together on solving this. And we saw the UK Green Building Council, as we've seen some of its predecessors in the Australian Green Building Council and what the US Green Building Council are doing, as fantastic collaborators and facilitators bringing the industry together to work towards a common goal, and that is progressing environmental movement in the built sector.
And that's the reason why the government has been so impressed by it, is because it isn't seen as an institutionalised or partial body in any form at all. It's actually a cross-industry body which does represent everybody.
What the Council's been able to do is to establish some really powerful common ground between all of these different stakeholders, particularly with respect to the zero carbon target, the definition of zero carbon. To get the buy-in of all its members around that has been really critical, and I think a lot of us are saying that's extremely helpful. That takes us to a place where otherwise we wouldn't have gone.
I chaired the Zero Carbon Task Group, and it was a fascinating process, to be honest, to get so many different people with so many different views to come to a single conclusion.
I've been chairing the Measurement and Reporting Task Force for the last few months. Why is that area so important? Early on in the days of the UK Green Building Council, we talked about the need to endorse government targets, to endorse the fact that we're going to strive towards zero carbon by 2016 in the new build sector. We're talking about dates around 2019 now for the non-domestic building sector. 2019 is the right balance. We're worried about it, we know we have to work hard to get there, but it's within the realms of achievement, and that's what makes a good target.
So the great thing about the 2016, the zero carbon housing target, was its clarity, even if it's still now got to be worked out in detail. That's the kind of target setting process we need, because business, even if it's a bit uneasy about it, it knows how to live with that kind of discipline.
I think by 2016, I think the demand from customers is going to be that much greater. I mean, I've seen over the last half a dozen years, working in both British Gas and in Barratt, I've seen quite a change in consumer attitudes here. And so I do think that we will start to get much more demand pull in terms of the requirements for low carbon homes. And that's really why Barratt's taken the line it has.
A new build is great, but it's the sexy part of the end. It's only a small percentage of the problem. What we have to do is to get to grips with the gross energy efficiency of most of the buildings in the country at the moment. So we have to tackle houses that are already built, and the French are doing that, the Germans to a certain extent are doing that. We haven't started yet.
I think that's the other key piece of policy making that the Green Building Council can work alongside an opposition and government with, to help make sure that we can develop policies that are actually realistically going to make a difference. Ultimately, we're doing this for a reason, which is to cut emissions, and we have to make sure that when we're developing and bringing through policies, they are actually going to be successful.
The existing building refurbishment sector is not nearly as dramatic or as sexy, if you like, as the new build sector, so we have to change attitudes to make it so. And we have actually found we can make that work on a couple of buildings, and so if we can show examples to the rest of people on the Green Buildings Council and beyond, that'll be helpful, I hope. And then more people might be more interested in the existing building stock.
Delivering low or even zero carbon housing does not guarantee sustainable housing. We've learnt that we can't do this at the single unit level. We know we have to do it in terms of bigger aggregations of housing in order to get the real gains around zero carbon. But then we've got to go on from that understanding to realise that we can't deliver this stuff unless we're thinking at the same time about housing in the community, housing in physical space, contributions to health, to well-being, to convivial neighbourhoods and all the rest of it. So it's tempting to do a narrow focused take on this, but it would be an illusion. We have to pitch this agenda absolutely into the heart of the concept of sustainable communities.
We mustn't forget that the UK Green Building Council is part of a global network of green building councils, and sustainability is a humanitarian issue before it is a market issue. And what I mean by that is that we shouldn't be worrying about, in my view, holding on to the intellectual property we create through the work we're doing. We should be sharing it globally, learning from what others are doing, but equally helping, in particular, developing nations build their sustainability credentials and capability in order to move this agenda forward.
The challenge in a way is to get a much greater involvement from the people who are not already involved in the Green Buildings Council, because there's still quite a bit of scepticism out there, a lot of confusion about the objectives and what sustainability really means and so on, because that, by the majority, that is the group of people who will be rolling out better buildings in the future. So we've got to get to them somehow and show that this joined up thinking that we're promoting really does have a great impact and is relatively straightforward to do.
I think the economic downturn puts an added pressure on the policy decisions that you have to take in addressing the challenges of climate change. But equally, it's very clear from the perspective of the Department for Business that climate change and the transition to a low carbon economy will bring both opportunities and risks. And the policy challenge is about getting that balance right and maximising those opportunities.
Never has there been a time for families to be more energy efficient, to help them bear down on their bills, and whether it's having smart meters or making sure that the bills that they get give them advice and comparison about whether they are wasting energy and whether they can save energy as households. I think this is precisely the right time to press on with these sorts of measures, because that's what people actually need government to do. They need some leadership in this area.
Readers have been interested in this agenda through economics ups and downs in the 40 years I've been in this field. And in every newspaper I've ever worked for, the environment has come top, apart from the television listings, in what people want to read about it.
At a time of downturn, the best buildings are the ones that are going to sell first, or do the best commercial business. So good sustainable homes or good sustainable commercial buildings, offices and the like, that'll be really, really important in the years to come. So I'm actually optimistic that in a downturn, the smart people will see the benefit of doing good sustainable work.
The only way out of this is to adopt a green agenda. That's where the new growth is going to come from. And I'm encouraged by how some parties, some politicians, even the Conservatives, who I never thought I'd vote for in my life, have grasped this point. So there's real hope, I think, that we might get a boom in the environmental concern out of this.